So in this painting, I started with the red underpainting that I usually do. If you haven't tried this, I know that to some of you who have followed me for a while, I sound like a broken record, but it really does make such a difference. And this is the cadmium red, and you can see that it's sort of diluted. It's an acrylic underpainting that I did. So you add a little water, depending on how, thick you want the underpainting to be. But this is what I usually do. I often start with the sky, and you can see that I did here, and then I decided, you know what, I'm going to just outline where those top juniper trees, darker grasses are. I'm just going to outline the edge first, just so I don't get carried away and bring it down to the wrong spot. But I don't do more than that. I just give myself some guiding lines down where the land is at the horizon, and then I go ahead with the sky just so that's done, since my hand is not really going to be up there. I'm focused on the bottom, so really it's easy to go top to bottom. That's what I do in a lot of my paintings. I will outline the darker values in the land, and then I go up to the sky. Unless it's a portrait, then it's completely different. But for a landscape, I do start with the sky, and here I am using I believe it is a phthalo blue and cerulean blue, and there's some white and transparent orange. And I will list it down below, all the colors and materials that I used in this painting, including the wood block and the brushes. Everything is listed down below in the notes section. So I used a lot of these vertical strokes in the sky, and then in some parts of it I did smooth it over so that it was very blended, but that gives a nice sort of progression of colors. And then I did leave some of the vertical strokes, so it's kind of a blend between those vertical strokes to give a little bit of interest and texture and the nice blended colors. You can see I add some of the vertical strokes in here just to give that look. I like that versus something that's trying to be completely smooth. So just a little bit white down at the bottom, and now I come in still with the large brush. You don't need to go too small, because it is easy after this too to bring those grasses up into the sky without messing anything up. It's easier to do that than it is to perfectly meet the land later on with the sky, if that makes sense. So this is how I usually do it. I use my same big brush, and I bring the sky all the way down, and then I can bring some grasses up over that horizon line when I get to that point in the painting. So yep, just blending. And again, I used the same brush the whole way through for the sky. If I was doing really defined clouds, then I would have done that differently. But since it's a very blendy sky where the colors are really merging into one another, I used the same large brush. I want to say that this is a bright number 16 brush, but I will check on that before I add it into the notes. Okay, so starting on the grasses here, and my inspiration for this painting was, if you've ever been to the beach in New England in the winter, if you have been lucky enough to be on Martha's Vineyard in the winter, or the Cape or Nantucket, Cape Cod for those of you not from the area, this is the feeling that I was going for. That feeling of just being the only person out there, the empty road through the dunes. This is the off-road, dune drive on Norton Point, on Martha's Vineyard. And when it's open in the winter, you're often just the only person out there. And I wanted to get that icy green straw feeling of the dune grasses in the winter. They turn this beautiful color, and it's a very warm but light green color. And again, I'm going to put all of the colors that I use. You can find them down below, but I love this look of the dunes in the winter. It's just like, I wanted to really capture that feeling of being out there, being out in the wind, in the cooler air, and just that look, that brittle look of the dune grasses, the sea grasses in the winter. And in my paintings, I'm always thinking about how I want to balance out local color with color that I add in really just for the feel of it, to enhance the feel of the painting. So we know that I add a lot of color. I love color in my paintings, but there's a balance, I think, between sticking to local color, which is the real color of a scene. So if you're painting a face, it's the actual skin tone. It's matching that real skin tone. It's matching the shadows. It's matching the real color of the sand and the grasses and the real blue of the sky. That's your local color. But there's all these other colors that you can bring in. Like, this is art. This is not real life. And we're trying to create the feel, or at least what I'm trying to do in my work and what I encourage my students to do, because, you know, the students who I'm teaching are not trying to be realistic painters. That's not what I'm here to teach anyone. My goal is always to capture that real feeling, the feeling of a place, what it feels like to me to be on Martha's Vineyard, what it feels like to me to drive through the Everglades, what it feels like to me to be the only human alive out on Chappie, out on Norton Point, in the middle of winter, and being the only witness to that scene, that wide open feeling of being there. So I'm not necessarily sticking true to color, but I pick and choose. So I like it to feel realistic enough that it's believable. I want our collector or the person who's looking at my painting to believe it. I want them to feel it too. This doesn't exist just in my imagination. You know, I want whoever's viewing this work to also believe in the painting. And so I do choose some local color, but then I also take creative license and choose how I want to enhance that. So was the sky this blue? Was the grass really this icy green? No, probably not. But it's how it feels to me. And those are the choices that you get to make as an artist. And that's one of the things that I love so much about being a landscape artist, is getting to make those choices. And these are, yes, the kind of things I think about as I fall asleep at night. I literally think about color theory so much of my day. If you see me zoning out in a conversation, if you know me in real life, I'm probably like working through a color theory issue in my head from one of my current painting projects. The other thing that I think about when I am creating these paintings, landscape paintings beyond color, is the brush strokes. So when I'm thinking through the brush strokes, it's sort of the same process that I have for the color. I really want to make sure whatever brushes I'm choosing, and therefore the brush strokes, are contributing to that overall feel of the painting that I'm hoping to achieve. Now, for one thing in this one, and you can't tell it in this video, but when you look at this painting closely, you can see the sort of contrasting brush strokes that are underneath from the underpainting. And I personally really like that. And it happens often in my paintings, just because in my landscape paintings, I like for at least a large portion of them to be very thin layers of paint. Some people might not like that in their paintings. So again, that's a choice that you get to make as the artist. So for my brushes, of course, your brushes that you prefer to use are going to also play a role in the brush strokes themselves. So the brushes I use are the Bright shape, which is flat, but with shorter bristles, so they're a little stiffer. And I really like those personally. So here in the grasses, I'm trying to give these stiff, almost like harsh brush strokes that is showing the direction of the wind as it moves through the grasses. And then of course in the sand, I'm using these softer, more flowy brush strokes. And in the sky, then of course I did even larger brush strokes for contrast. So after color, I think that that's really the biggest part of a painting. So I would definitely spend a lot of time. I do spend a lot of time thinking about that when I am planning out a painting sort of in my head before I get started. So feel free to watch this again. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to paint this along with me, you can certainly pause the video a lot while you paint along. And again, thanks so much for being here and happy painting.